Hey everybody, for those of you that don't know, my name's Hoopy, and today we're working on this old RZR 800. And whenever I say old RZR 800, I mean this is a 2008. This is the first generation. This is what you started with. And this thing's got some issues with the shifting. The guy brought it to me, said he changed the shift cable, said at first he couldn't even get it to go into park, never could get it to go into high, and it would only shift back and forth there, barely. Yesterday, brought it in here, and I think the shifter cable came off because I found all the hardware in the cup holder. So we're going to get into this and make sure that there's not something going on in the transmission, and I'm hoping that it's just the shift cable's out of adjustment. So we'll dig into this. So I went ahead and jacked this thing up in the air, yanked the seats out. The center console wasn't even screwed in, so I just popped it out of here. First thing I noticed, what had happened while the shifter quit working, is the cable popped out of its slot. I went ahead and slid it back in there and tightened it up just a little bit. Next up, what I want to do is I'm just going to go ahead and unhook the cable from back here on the shift lever, right here. I'm going to pull the cable off here. We're going to start this thing up, and we're going to make sure all the gears are there. We're going to move this manually by hand, and we're going to make sure we can get it into high, and high works. And then if it does, then we know we just got an issue with the shifting cable. All right, I went ahead and got my shift cable off, and I popped this all the way back up, which is park. I know park works. So I'm gonna try to start this thing because I pushed it in the garage. The battery's dead. I'm gonna get a jumper and try to start this, and if we can get it to run, then we'll go through the gears. All right, so right off the bat, I couldn't get the key to work. I had to use my screwdriver and jump the solenoid to get it to start. This thing has a bad exhaust leak over here somewhere. I mean, I can hear it, it's terrible. The springs are rusted off the exhaust right here. So the guy that brought this to me said it's been sitting for over a year, not even ran. So I'm surprised it runs as good as it's doing right now, to be honest. All right, let's see if we can get this thing to go through the gears before we worry about anything else. All right, one click down should be reversed. That ain't good. This isn't looking good. I think I already know the issue. That should be neutral. There should be low. High. All right, so we got all the gears, and you can just kind of feel how this just doesn't quite feel right. All right, I did some adjustments on that cable there, and I've got the gear shifter to where it should be into high. But, so let me show you what I... See how far back that shift lever is? Something's going on here. I don't... oh boy. Is that the issue? Somebody's cut that off and welded the hell out of that. You can see that cobbled up weld on there. I bet you that's what's going on. That's why that shifter is so crooked like that. I might have got into a mess on this bike. All right, I'm gonna see if it's in high and see if it'll move or not. And we'll have to do some figuring here. All right, so I can confirm this. This thing's got internal transmission issues. I had my dad send me a picture of his 800 on the positions, and park is about right in here, and high should stop about right there. And you can see how that moves freely between there. That shouldn't do that. There should be tension on that at all times. Like, if I go from here to here, I should be changing a gear. Like, there's low. That should be high, but you've got to go all the way down to get it into high. So we've got some internal transmission issues here. Yeah. We'll call the customer and see what he wants to do, because this is a big job to yank this out of here. Well, I just got off the phone with the customer, and he said go ahead and fix it. So, first thing I got to do is get this thing to the front of the garage in case I got to work on anything else. I can still get in here. Because I'm going to say it's probably going to take about 10 hours total time, in, out, everything. So we got to move this up to the front of the garage, and we're going to work on yanking the transmission clear out of this thing. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Yay! Alright, I got this thing up in the air. I'm going to go ahead, pull the back plastic off, and get everything stripped down here to where I can get into here. I'm not going to make you guys watch me do this. If you want to see that, I've got another video where I changed an engine in one of these. You can go check that one out. I did the whole thing, stripping all this down. I'll give you a basic run through. There's some screws here, some screws back here after you pull this bumper off, and there's one pigtail underneath to unhook the tail lights, and there's a couple screws along here, and this whole back piece of plastic comes off. You can take it off in one chunk. You don't have to split this. You do not have to pull this off separate. You can take the whole thing off in one go. So I'm gonna get to that. So I got the back of this thing yanked off there, and I got this completely mud covered skid plate down off of it. I got the thing stripped down to a point to where I needed to take it outside and pressure wash it off. I got to get some of this dirt off here so I can see the bolts and stuff. I mean, I've got to take these bolts out here. They're just covered in mud. I have to undo the air filter and stuff to get down in here. And then down in here where the motor bolts to the transmission, it's packed clear full. So I've got to clean this all off, and then I'll get it back in the garage, and we're going to let it dry from that point. It took me a little bit to find this. I haven't used it in a couple of years, but I knew I had one. Finally dug it out there. I'm going to need it for whenever I get inside this transmission. But the only time it's ever been used is whenever I redid the head on my dad's RZR. I needed the torque specs and everything, so I went ahead and bought a book. It's brand new. So, yeah, I got it. Alright, I'm pretty much at my quitting point tonight. My heart's just not in it right now. I've been poking at this for about 3 hours, just taking a little bit off, sway bars out of the way, air cleaners off, got the tires off, all the bars up top are off, I got the belt off, just a whole bunch of stuff like that. I glanced at that book shortly, and what it's telling me is it wants me to pull engine, transmission, and rear diff as a unit. And I'm telling you now, I ain't doing that, because it was a pain in the ass just to pull an engine. There's not a lot of room to wiggle and get stuff out of here. I'm not pulling the engine with this. I will pull my primary and secondary clutches and get rid of that cover, and I can split the engine and transmission apart, and I might have to pull the bolts on the rear diff and leave it here and pull it out at like an angle to slide the shaft out of it. But yeah, I'm not pulling that motor. I'm not having to go through refilling the antifreeze and all that stuff. It's just not happening. I will work around this. So I've hit a slight snag here. Primary clutch, it came right off like it's supposed to. I've got a clutch pulling tool you shove in there, spin it, bop, boom, off it comes. The secondary clutch, you're supposed to just pull the bolt out and this thing slide off. Considering it's 2008, We're in 2024. You know, what's that make this thing? 14 years old? No, 15, 16. Jesus. I graduated in 2008, by the way, so, you know, I'm trying to run through my head here. Anyhow, yeah, this is supposed to slide right off because it's just on a spline shaft, but it's seized on there. So I'm going to try to get my gear pullers on here and get this one to pop off. I don't know if I'll have any luck at it. I'll get it one way or another, but yeah. I shoved a 1/2-inch drive extension in there to give me my reach I needed here. Ooh, come on. It started bringing it. We're going to try to squeeze the impact on here. See what happens. Be nice if I could get in here to hold this thing. Help if I go the right direction. All right. Look at the rust on that thing. That thing's completely red. She was fighting us, but I got her off there. Right, so I'm back on this thing again. I got a few more things pulled off. I got the belt backing plate and stuff pulled off here. And as I was looking up some parts last night, I think I called this thing a 2008, and it's actually going to be a 2009 model. But the manufacturing date, let's see here. Manufacturing date 9/15/2008. So whenever you start looking up parts, like right here, drivetrain, gear case, carrier, internal components, 10/15/08 and before, 10/16/08 and after. And this is under a 2009 model. So whenever you start looking this stuff up, one of the biggest differences that I found between an 09 and an 08 is the 08s have another little ball bearing thing right here, and the 09s didn't. This thing had two, I forget what they're called right now, but anyhow, it's got a little ball bearing that goes into the notches, and the 09s only have one in them. The 08s had two, and there's two different styles of these shift fork things basically that go in here, the part that I think is bad in this transmission. So I've got to tear this apart, double check, make sure it's the right one, see if I can weld it. Hopefully I can just weld it up, and then yeah, we'll go from there. So next step in this process is to remove the front drive shaft out of these bikes, and how you've got to get it out of here. And I hate this that they did this. They put a roll pin inside this front yoke up here. They say do not drive this out with a hammer and a punch, and I have never had good luck doing that. Every time I've done it, usually the pinion seal starts leaking. They say to press it out. I don't have any way to press this out. What I normally do is drill them, and then I put a 1/4-inch bolt back in them so you never have this issue again. I've never had any issues with the 1/4-inch bolt in these. So, yeah, I'm going to drill this out, and then we'll get this front drive shaft out of here. So on this yoke, I drilled into both sides of this roll pin to where I started shoving the other side out. So I believe that now I can take a 1/4-inch bolt, I'll stick it in here and just peck that out, and it should knock that roll pin right out of there, considering I've shoved that much out just pushing on it with a drill. And I drilled into both sides to thin it out. This way it comes out easy. Because these things, they suck. And pounding them in and out, like I said, it'll screw your pinion seal up. And I just very, very lightly tapped that 1/4-inch bolt up in there. And you can see how much of that I've drove out. So it's just I mean, just wee little light taps is knocking that out. So that's why I drill them. This way you're not pounding on stuff hard. And like that right there, there's that old roll pin out. You can see that right here, this is all I didn't drill in the middle. And I would have drilled the whole thing out, but it started shoving out with that little bit in there. So just tapped it out of there very gently, so you don't screw nothing up. So when you're removing this drive shaft, what you've got to do is get it shoved way back here at first, and that'll allow it to come off your front pinion. Because it's got to slide back off this one. And then after you do that, you're going to pull this thing to the side as far as you can and pull it forward. And once you get it up in here like that, it falls off the back. Then you can get a hold of it and take it out the driver's side in the rear. You've got to kind of pull it out and around and pull the drive shaft out like that. If you're ever going to change U-joints or anything, that's how you got to bring it out. Otherwise, you can get it out the front, but you've got to take the front cover off and remove your front axle as well in order to get it to clear it. It's easier to go out the back. For what I'm doing, I don't need to fully remove the drive shaft. I'm just going to leave it lay there out of the way so it's unhooked, because I've got to bring the transmission forward to get it in and around and out of here. I went ahead and drained the goop out of the transmission and transfer case. And whenever I say goop, somebody had red ATF in the transfer case and had some kind of gear oil in the transmission. Polaris calls for AGL in both those. I don't know what their AGL is, but it's like a thin hydraulic type fluid. It's not gear oil, I can tell you that much. Gear oil on these 800s only goes in the rear. And I forget what they call that fluid. The front's demand drive, the rear's angle drive fluid. So, got that drained out, and let's start unbolting this thing, get ready to come out. So in order to split the engine from the transmission, there's a plate down in here. And it has 2 nuts and 4 bolts. And you have to get these 10mm bolts out. Top 2 you can get with a ratchet and a socket, these bottom 2. A ratchet wrench won't fit in there. A socket and a ratchet won't fit. It's literally a box end wrench, and you've got to unscrew both of them the entire way. After you get this off, underneath there is 2 more studs and nuts, and you take the nuts off those studs, and the engine and transmission are apart then. Next up on this, as I've said, the book wanted me to remove this entire piece as a unit, differential and all. I'm not doing that. I'm doing it a different way because I don't feel like doing all that. I've undid the engine, top and bottom. I will have to jack it up a little bit to get the 2 studs out of the slots. Down in here on this tail shaft, there is, oh, right there, 1, 2 bolts that you can get from up top, and then there's 2 or 3 underneath, and that unbolts this rear differential section. And then as far as the transmission itself, I've got the mount, and then there is 2 bolts back here that hold this plate that go between it in, and then I should be able to wiggle it out of there, taking it forward. So I'm gonna get everything unbolted, and then I'll record while I'm pulling this thing out of here. So in case something funny happens, you get to see it. So on those bottom tail shaft bolts, there's 1 bolt that you can go through from clear back here in the back with some long extensions. I'll show you what it looks like under here. But it's right there behind a cross member, and you can't get a wrench onto it. Well, I did to break it loose, but you can't unscrew it. So I just ran the socket from clear back in the back, and there was 1 more right here. That one there came out pretty easy with the wrench. But yeah, extensions clear out the back. That works good. All right, I've got everything unbolted. I got the 3 bolts that went to this bracket undone. I had to undo the motor mount bolts and jack the engine up slightly to get it to come out of the 2 things, the studs down in there. So technically the engine is freed up, but it's not pulled out of the bike. Nothing's unhooked. Got a ratchet strap on there for safety, just to be safe. The only thing I have left to do is there's 1, 2, and 3 bolts for this motor mount. I've already took the 2 bottom bolts out so I can take the whole thing out of my way. And I should be able to wiggle this and get the tail shaft to pull off. It splits right in here and get that to slide out, and transmission is coming out with me. It's going slowly but surely. There it is. All right. Will it sit there long enough for me to get around? No, it won't. Oh, I can burn it out right here. Okay. And there we go, like that. Transmission is out on the bench. Well, now that we got this transmission out of here, the first thing that I'm gonna do is take it over, and we're gonna use some good old heavy duty oven cleaner. And we're gonna clean this thing up. We're gonna make it look like new. And then we can tear it apart. All right, we got the transmission all cleaned up good. Got it back up here on the bench. I'm gonna let this dry overnight. Tomorrow after work, I'll be in here and we'll work on it. I'm probably gonna go ahead and spray these shafts down with some WD-40 or something real quick, just to keep them from flash rusting and stuff overnight. And yeah, be on her tomorrow. All right, it is a new day, and we are ready to tear this transmission apart. Whenever I was reading the book, you know, doing a little bit of stuff that it told me to do, reading up on it, it said to take a piece of cardboard and draw me out a template and poke some holes in it to stick these bolts in there, because it said these bolts are different lengths and you don't want to screw up and put the wrong one in the wrong spot. So I'm going to go ahead and take care of that real quick, and then we will crack into this thing. I got my absolutely terrible template drew out here. So we're going to pull bolts and start sticking them in these holes. Alright, so I took a 1/4 inch bolt and a washer because I don't have the 1/4 inch adapter for my slide hammer, and I don't feel like welding one up. And I have a lead battery terminal here that I'm going to use for the hammer part here. So we're going to take this, and it says don't pry this off because you don't want to screw up any of your mating surfaces, but there's several lips around here that I should be able to pry on gently and not hurt anything. And I don't know if this is going to work, but we're going to try it. Yeah, I don't know how that's supposed to work, because it was saying use a freaking piece of all thread and something else. I got her to pop. And there we go. there's a cover door transfer case off. So once you're in here, the book is telling me, it wanted me to take everything apart. I ain't doing that. I don't need to take anything from this section of the transfer case apart. The only thing I've got to do is get this gear off and get this gear off. Actually, I don't even think I have to take this one off. But it should just slide out of there. But I need to get this gear off here. I got to take the snap ring off. We've got to take it off in order to get the cover off the transmission. Just double checking that none of these bolts in here go into this case. They don't, so we are good to go there. I forgot about that. It said that the bearing cap and these shims might come off with it, and they did. So I'm just going to lay them back into this case like this, just so we don't lose those. The bearing is actually pressed on there, but that cap was not. And there's a snap ring right here on this gear here. Like I said, I'm pretty sure this is the only one we've got to pull off, because we're trying to get into the next part of this, not this part. I'll lay this right here in this cap. Wouldn't you know it, there's another snap ring. Alright, we got both those snap rings out of there. There's a couple bolts on the back side, I do believe we got to get out. Yeah, there's two. I'm just going to buzz these out real quick, and we'll stand this thing back up. That's easier for me. I just numbered them. Pretty sure these are all the same length on this ones, but just to be safe, we numbered them. Good, thank you.
No problem.
Uh-oh, something's got me. No, there's a bearing you got to get around. All right, note to self. We have to get around this bearing here with this gear that's stuck inside here. Well, it's supposed to be inside there. It's not stuck. Everything looks good. Mechanically wise, there was some metal shavings on this drain plug whenever I pulled it, and there's a little bit. I mean, that's pretty silver, but all in all, it looks pretty good. It's a 2009 for crying out loud. All right, so as for our shifter problem, this should be a pretty easy fix, I'm assuming, with the way it's looking. So, shifter runs through here, over to this, and you can see how it's moving this thing here. But what it's not doing is whenever it's actually got pressure on it, it's rotating inside this. And that's what it's not supposed to do. See how that shaft moved? See it there? So this is supposed to be welded to this, and the welds break. So we've got to disassemble this unit here, and then find where center's at, and we can re-weld this and hopefully save it. So, unfortunately, I think I'm wrong on something. And the fact of the matter is that if I could get this centered on here, I could just weld on the outside of this. I'd have to stuff down in here with rags and everything else, keep splatter from getting on these gears. And that would essentially fix this issue. But it's not going to properly fix it. So I guess on the end of this shaft, there's like two little teeth that fit into grooves over here. And my understanding is they're wallered out into those grooves is what's going on. I don't know. I'm going to have to disassemble this and we're going to figure it out. All right, so the thing I'm having issues with is this paragraph right here. 3 different shift collar designs have been used over the models covered in this manual. And this manual shows 2010 and later. So it's showing different stuff that doesn't quite look the same in here. I mean, most of it is, except for basically the shift things. So, yeah, we might do some redneck ingenuity here in a second. So, after just a little bit of digging online, this here was a guy with a 2009 as well. And he had the exact same issue here, and this is the same piece in here that he has shown pictured with the same issue. And as he says in his thing, you can see where the welds, you can see that weld there was supposed to be there, that one there, up there, where they had broke and it was allowing it to rotate. That is what's going on this one. I can see that much from this side here. You can see the round spot thing. You can see it moving there. How I'm going to figure out where I need it is you should be able to line this up once it's in park with something on the outside of the case here. So I'll remove my detent spring so this thing will shift into park. I'll get it into the park position easily here. And then I'll get this rod where it should be here, and I'm going to clean this off with some brake clean and stuff and put a mark on here so that once I tear it apart, I know exactly where to line it up to weld it. So park should be right at a vertical 90, and you can see how this is slightly back. And I've got it in park because I've got it in my last detent down there. So I'm just going to take and just rotate that back just slightly to where it's vertical. And we're going to mark that in here. I'm going to clean that off with some brake clean and stuff. We'll get that marked up, and then we'll take this apart. So I marked this 3 different ways. 1 with black Milwaukee marker. 2, I scribed it with a punch, just slightly scratching it. 3, I used silver Sharpie. I should be able to keep this thing lined up now. So let's get this pulled apart real quick. All right, I went ahead and pulled this cap and this spring out of the detent thing. The little ball didn't come out. It's inside here. I can't get it to come out. I'm just going to have to be careful. The next bolt is Allen head to get this shaft off of here. I'm assuming it's metric, considering all the other Allen caps on this bike are, on all the Polarises. Six is a little bit loose, and 7's just a teensy bit too big. So it must be standard. It is 1/4 inch. All right, so I didn't find a little bolt, but I stuck a cotter key down in there and just twisted it on it as hard as I could sideways, and it gripped it, and I was able to pull this shaft out of there like that. All right, I guess I forgot a step. That in being, I need to remove this snap ring. Got the ring. It didn't go flying. So you're supposed to be able to pull this piece we're needing out this direction, which is going to allow you to slide all this junk off here. I'm literally calling this junk. Clean rag. Set this stuff down here so I don't lose any of it. Now I got to take a wire wheel and clean this shaft here up and pull this bolt out of the end of it so we can take it out this direction. To clean all this rust off here so I don't screw these seals up. And get this all cleaned up, pop this off, and the shaft will come out to the inside. Shaft up. All right, slide this out of here. And like that. There's the piece we need. My mark is slightly off. I'm able to turn it by hand and put it where I need it though. I believe we're good to go. You can see where that little piece I showed you, how it was there and broke off. That means there's probably another one down in there too. We're going to have to look and find it, but I'm just going to take and weld here and here and maybe put a little bit on the outside of this, and we're going to put it back together. So there's those two little metal pieces. The other one was inside here where this shaft meets it, but those are just two little tits that stick down, and that's what this catches on, and those are gone. So we're just going to weld our own on there and be done with it. Let's hope the old MIG welder here actually wants to do what it's supposed to today, and see what we can get done here. Well, that ought to do the trick. Well, there's one little thing I got to take care of. I'm going to take the die grinder and grind that little bit of weld off there, just down inside this, because this isn't going to slide inside there right now. I'm going to take care of that real quick, and then we'll be putting this thing back together. I went ahead and took the grinder real quick and just refaced that so it's nice and smooth, because it does butt up against the all that other thing, just so I know it's fitting in there real good. And yeah, I think we're good. Got a couple tacks on each side of that, and those are welded in there good. Yeah, I think we'll be good. Ready to start reassembling. And before anybody says that I'm doing this because I'm cheap or anything like that, no, I'm doing this to save the customer money. Because this here, I want to say, was $200 and some. and there was nothing really wrong with it other than it wasn't made great. So, yeah. Nice thing is if I have this in the wrong spot, I can pull this cover off and readjust it back to where it needs to go. That's no big deal. All right, we got her cleaned up. We're ready for silicone. Alrighty, let's get this piece put back up on here. Gotta remember to fish that gear around that shaft. Making sure everything's meshing correctly. Oh, that would be a freaking issue. Of course that would get me. Oh, you bastard. I think we'll be all right. Screw us up. And there we go. She slid together. All right. Let's start sticking a couple bolts in it. All right, there's that part. Got silicone, just a little bit of it squeezed out the whole way around. That's perfect. This way we know we got her sealed up good. And we will let this cure after I get this other part on here. We're gonna let it cure overnight before we ever do anything else with it. All right, let's go ahead and start sticking gears back in here. Wipe this section down one more time. We gotta clean the lid off. Gotta make sure that I don't lose the bearing cap and those shims. I'll probably put some grease on them to hold them in there. And don't roast me on putting grease on them because there's already grease in the lid. All right, time for a little bolt category here. That's park. No, that's neutral. That's high. There's low. Neutral again. Reverse. And park. We've got all our gears. So we must have did something kind of right. I'm going to get the torque wrench out and we're going to go over these all real quick. And we're going to let it sit overnight and dry. Alright, she's all back together, everything works, she's all torqued up. We're going to let her sit there overnight and cure, and tomorrow we are going to start putting it back into this thing. Alright, we finished up assembling this transmission last night. I went ahead and put this bracket back on here as well. I didn't record that, forgot. So what I'm going to do, just to be safe, now that I've got it out here while it's still out, I'm going to carry it over and we're going to plug this plug right here in and shift through the gears and watch on the dash and make sure they all register in the right place. Because now's the time to correct it while it's out here and easy. And then we'll go to sticking this back in there. So I'll show you what I got going on. What I'm going to do to help me do this, I got this ratchet strap on the engine. I'm going to lower my jack down and move it up here to where I can set the transmission in here to hold it so I can plug this in and check it and everything. Honestly, I can probably leave it set right there pretty good. Alright, so we're just going to plug this sensor in. It's the only one I'm really worried about right now. I don't know what you guys can see here. Right back there's the shift rod. And I'm just going to turn the key on and look at the dash indicator up here. That's park. That's supposed to be reverse. Neutral. Low. High. Oh, it's just water. Okay. Alright, so I've got to tear that thing off and reset that sensor then. So I'm honestly just really glad I was smart enough to check this before I bolted everything in there and it was hard to get to. I'm pretty sure all I got to do is pop this off and readjust it and it'll be fine. I don't think I had to actually spin the gear. I hope not, because that means everything's got to come back apart just to reset that. And I wouldn't think they would do that. Okay, so this thing here, I was going to say, this has to be movable. I'm going to have to get some needle nose pliers so I can get a hold of it. I'm going to have to double check the book, but I'm pretty sure I'm supposed to aim it at this hole when it's in neutral. It's one of the two holes. Yeah, it's that simple to adjust. Thank goodness. Okay. Line the two holes of shift drum with the two threaded holes. Which one's which? So it's saying point it that way. Okay, so this book, it's showing, get the right pliers. So it says to line these holes with these two, and it's pretty specifically pointing at that hole to that one. And I know the transmission's in neutral. I shifted it there to be sure. We got it back in here. We got it plugged in, and as you can see, we have neutral on the dash. So we are good to go there now. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and start bolting stuff back together. Probably not going to do a lot of recording. It's hard to get in here and do that. I showed you guys taking it apart. So I'll probably show you once I get her slapped halfway back together here. Damn it. help if I could see what the hell I was doing. There it is. we got the transmission and the motor bolted all back together and bolted in here. Got the shifter cable ran back up where it goes. I got my few connections on the transmission plugged in. I got the drive shaft put back on. And I want to correct something I said. Whenever I said I replaced the roll pins with a 1/4 inch bolt, it is not a 1/4 inch bolt. It is a 5/16 bolt. But as you can see, there it is on the front drive shaft. Let's see here. I'll rotate it all the way around. It doesn't interfere with anything. And that works out way better than that stupid roll pin. You can get it out if you ever need to. So, there you go. Alright, I'm going to keep plugging away on this thing. Alright, well, I'm at my stopping point tonight. I can't go much farther anyhow because I'm waiting on the exhaust gaskets, the oil, and stuff like that. And I don't want to dig into this very much farther. I mean, that's basically all I've got left, other than I could probably put the seatbelt bar back in. But the rest of this has to stay out for now. So, I promised the old lady I'd go hang out with her for a little bit tonight. And so we'll be back on this tomorrow. Alright, it's the next day and we are back here. And everything I order, I get off Rocky Mountain ATV. They ship it right out of Kentucky. I usually have it the next day. I can order something at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and the next day it's delivered. I've done that with a few things, including a set of tires and wheels. We got our gasket for the exhaust and our springs. By the way, this Polaris gasket here, for the exhaust leak, was $40 by itself. That's just ridiculous, but it is what it is. Got our Maxima engine oil, Polaris AGL for the transmission. We got a new air filter, and there's the oil filter. So, all right, we are to the point of testing. I got everything slapped back together here, other than cosmetics. And I'm gonna jump the battery. I've got to air up these tires real quick. Jump the battery, start this thing. We're gonna go out the driveway and back, make sure it goes through all the gears, gets all the oil up where it goes, can bring it back. Well, everything on the transmission works fine, just like it's supposed to. Still got something going on with this exhaust. It's not leaking around either of the gaskets. I can feel the air coming out down in here, which I think the head pipe has a crack in it. I'm gonna let this thing cool back down because it's clearly hot. Try like hell to unhook those springs again, and then we'll try to unbolt that head pipe, see if we can get it off. If it's just got a crack in it, I'll try to weld it. If it's too far gone, we're gonna have to get a new one. But as far as the rest of the RZR goes, it's all good to go. So I can go ahead and slap the skid plate back on this while I'm waiting on this to cool down and get this center console and this inside section done. I can't put the bed on yet because clearly I'm going to work on that. All right, I got that head pipe out of there and the manifold here. Yeah, you know, seen some better days there. Can you see those cracks all through there? That's light shining through it. I'm going to take it off there and try to weld it. I am going to make an attempt. It may fail, but I'm not out nothing, because if it fails, then I got to get a new one, and that needs a new one anyhow. So I'm going to try to fix it first. All right, we got this thing over here to the bench. It's pretty dirty. Like I said, I'm not out nothing but trying to weld this. I'm going to take the wire wheel, clean this up best I can, and I got to cut this bracket off of here because I got to be able to get in here and weld this top crack. So I'm going to work on that real quick. All right, we got this thing all prepped out and ready here. Again, I'm not out anything by trying to weld this. It may work, it may not. I think I can do it. We're gonna give it a shot. I've got this welder as low as it'll go on this with this wire, and I'm still blowing through this stuff. I'm just trying to fill around and build it in. Do what I can here. I think I can save it though. Right there's the first side. By no means is it pretty. It is ugly. I kept blowing through, and I just had to keep building it up. This side didn't turn out too bad, honestly. For what it is, this stuff's old and rusty and thin, and I just kept building down through there, and it filled the gap up. So that should take care of it. I gotta weld this little bracket back on here, which is gonna be really fun, as thin as that is. We'll see what happens. Oh shit! I had a fire going on here. Bad thing is that fire was underneath the camera. Alrighty, we got that exhaust all bolted back together. Let's jump this thing, see if it starts, and see if it's any quieter. That's way more better. Alright, so my new dilemma. That's neutral. Neutral's not supposed to be there. Neutral should be up here somewhere. I think it's got something to do because if I shift this back, that's low. I can't even get it back any farther to go into high. I think it has something to do with whoever in the hell cut that off and welded it. I would say some of it's got to do with that. I could be wrong. So I've got a little bit of adjustment here. I can move a washer around and take up a little bit more slack there. That will actually shove it the wrong way. I might stack some shims on that or something. If I could get that to go back, that would allow me to pull that handle up some. I think it's all in what they did when they cut and welded that. They tilted that back too far. Because if you was to twist this forward, put it about right here, that would have put that where it needs to go. That's the whole freaking issue. All right. I'll be back on this tomorrow because I'm probably going to cut that off and re-weld it back on there. All right, I went ahead and got the shift cable unhooked and got the shift lever off here. There's not going to be any easy way of doing this because the gas tank's right here, and I've got to cut this. I'm not going to use a plasma cutter because this is a plastic gas tank and I don't want to throw stuff like that. I'm probably going to use a grinder and a cutoff wheel, and this is going to be a pain to get in there. But yeah, I've got to cut these big, ugly Gorilla welds off here so that we can move this forward about, roughly an inch or so, and that ought to take care of the problem. Also, if, say I move it forward an inch and I still need a little bit more, I may possibly be able to put a slight bend in this handle. I would rather get it out of that though, so that's what we're doing. So that there's the remnants of those welds. I gotta clean that all up. That's terrible. That's not gonna work at all. Re-weld this back on here. And then I've got to grind all these boogers off here. All right, we got everything ground out nice and smooth here, and got this thing cleaned up. Got those big booger welds off there. So basically, we're gonna weld this back on here, and I'll have to kind of test fit, stick it on here, test fit.
the back of the cable needs to almost touch this, is where it needs to be leaned. This needs to be about 2 inches overhung of the front of this. So, yeah, I might have to cut a little bit more out of this here to get it to sit quite right. But we'll get her. So, upon slight investigation, I think I figured out another issue. This here is the shift cable that came on the bike originally, and the guy gave this to me whenever he brought me the bike. That's the one that he had installed on it. Well, it's not the same cable. These cables actually have 2 different stroke lengths, and that one's fully compressed there, and that one's fully compressed there, and as you can see, there's about an inch difference in them, which makes a big difference. So I'm going to put this original one back on here, and this should straighten everything up after I've welded that back on. Alright, we got that shifter cable switched out on here, and that changed the position of this gear shifter significantly. I test fitted the plastic on there and made sure it would go from park to high, and got that all situated on there. And we're sitting in neutral as we speak. So I'm gonna go ahead and burn this on here because it's staying there, and then we're gonna slap this thing back together. We've got her handled. Well, those don't look great, but they are certainly better than what was on there to begin with. So I'm gonna paint them up, and we're gonna put this thing back together. Getting ready to go on the final test ride. And we're in neutral, reverse. Low. High. Well, there we have it. There was fixing up this 2009 RZR 800. Tore the transmission clear out of it, welded everything up, fixed the exhaust, fixed the shifter. Just did a bunch of work to this old thing. You guys like videos like this? Go check out the rest of my channel. Thanks for watching.